Okay, so we're live. It is November 26th, one day before Thanksgiving, and so grateful to be here. And I'm sure we're all very thankful for a fantastic year so far and much to come in the holiday season, Christmas, and all that. Lots going on in the world. We're going to go through some of that after our intro. So we have a great guest, and let's have John Sibley Butler play some music.
The eyes of Texas are upon you all your live long day. The eyes of Texas are upon you. You cannot get away. Do not think you can escape them from dawn to early in the morning. The eyes of Texas are upon you till Gabriel blows his Texas fight, Texas fight, Texas fight. And goodbye to Texas University. So long to the orange and white, and it's good luck to the dear old Texas Aggies. They are the ones who show the real old fight. The eyes of Texas are up on you. That is the song they sing so well. Sounds like hell. So goodbye to Texas University. So long to the ra-da-da-da-da, ra-da-da-da-da, ya-ya-ya-ya-ya-da-da-da. Saw Texas bound off. Big game, big game, big
All
game.
right, all right. That's I love that. I
We got a
love
big
that.
game coming up here. Here, my
Absolutely.
alma mater goes to go to Oklahoma, so I got to fight them again, LSU, and a big game, 160 years, and the Aggies are undefeated, and they know what's coming. They know what's
Well,
coming.
I'm always surprised by what's going on in all fronts. Football is the season is going wild, and as you know, Johnny and John, the Longhorns, all they need to do to have a great season is beat Oklahoma, which they already did,
No,
and
that's the
now
old
beat
days. No, you're
and now beat Texas A&M, and which they always had in the past, and they had to spoil a 11-0 season, perfect season they have so far. So
well.
we'll see. It's going to be a fabulous game on Friday, but switching gears real quick, Johnny. There is so much going on. I hear all kinds of things about a new dawn of crypto, resetting the national debt and repricing gold to $20,000 per ounce. The holdings and the U.S. government is $11 billion, 126 point 106 126.1 million ounces of gold. And apparently, this administration has a plan to pay the debt by repricing gold from $42 an ounce, which is the current price. This was done in 1971. And in the crypto world, the U.S. is holding, I don't know how many, is the third or the fourth largest holder of Bitcoin so far, and buying all kinds of other coins. And they're trying to do a reset economically with the US crypto dollar, which is something they're planning to release in 2026. And the AI guys are going nuts, and the president signed an executive order to make the U.S. government and Department of Defense the number one Manhattan-style project for AI. Something about close to $1 trillion will be invested in that. So the AI thing is just accelerating with open cloud and uh, Google's taking the lead right now in partnership with Broadcom, and the Nvidia guys are fighting to reduce their prices, and the Tesla guys are jumping on and doing all kinds of things. The robots are coming out soon. I mean, what is in the world going to go
Well, let
and
me explain
happen
it.
here, Johnny?
Llewellyn isn't here, so I'll take his spot. There's the real economy of goods and services, and there's the shadow economy of money and credit. And the goods of services, the real economy of goods and services traditionally have been composed mostly of the things that we can make and we can buy. And so those are great indicators to look at it. When I go to visit, I ask the truck drivers, are you busy? The delivery
Hmm.
drivers, are you busy? That is my indicator of the economy. And of course, that is being disrupted by something that we have never had before. And I mentioned it is called cloud capitalism. So therefore, the economy of money and credit is really, really taking off. And let me just remind you that prior to the Civil War, every bank had its own currency. It wasn't until went down to Florida, to the islands, and took the gold. We went off the gold standards. But Andreas, and I don't even call it uncertainty anymore. I call it a brand new economy of making money and providing jobs sometimes, because my next book is the company I did that had a valuation of $1 billion with no employees. So the cloud economy makes it possible for people to create different kind of economies. Now, but underneath it all, and this is why China will have trouble competing with us, is freedom and entrepreneurship.
Hmm. Hmm.
Show me a country with no entrepreneurs and they can't let be free, and I show you a great economy in the future. Show me an economy where you restrict
So four MIT
entrepreneurship,
students just became some of the
then I
youngest
will show you
self-employed
an economy that will fail or not be as good in the future.
So let me tell you exactly how
And let me just comment on the governmental stuff. This president has tried to do a big thing, and I think it's what Lincoln tried to do, because Lincoln ended slavery. It's what Madison tried to do with the movement of Native Americans. These are big things, right? And if you pull big things off, you become a hero.
Hmm.
You don't pull big things off, you don't become a hero. So what this president did, if I'm doing analysis, was try to disrupt, disrupt not the American economy, but the international economy, because, as my good friend Steve Banner said to me, just go out to San Francisco and watch all your raw materials going to China, and they come back and you purchase them as products, and the definition of that is a colony. So what we're doing here, in addition to the economies that we have,
Hmm.
it is about the saving of Western civilization. So it's not only us who are colony, and this is from Steve Banner, a dear friend. It is also my jailbird friend, I might add. It is also what happens to Europe, because now we don't say the best things are made in Germany. We say the best things are made in China. So we never we have now a new hegemony, as we say in the academic world, where people are saying now the following.
Hmm.
America should be the leader in economic development and what we call developing countries, right? And so we all want to
Hmm.
be like America, but all of a sudden, undeveloped countries are looking to China and saying, well, maybe we should be like China. Now, here's the problem. We have never seen, we have never seen, as my political science professor used to say in my class at LSU, communism versus democracy. You should remember that,
Hmm.
John. We have never seen America have a competitor on the world scene for leadership. Let me just say this, taking Llewellyn's time. So in 19, in 2008 when we had the crisis, and I had a president's appointment from President Bush then, and Wall Street came to the White House, got on their knees and said, we need X trillions of dollars of Western civilization. We're falling apart. And the president said, I can't do that. So they went to Pelosi and she said, okay. And they bailed Wall Street out, not with their money, but with my money and your money. And that was the beginning of what I call the Tea Party in America, not the Republican Party, right? I am a Lincoln Republican. I'm not a Dixiecrat like my Republicans who just jumped in the party 20 years ago. I am a Lincoln Republican, and Lincoln said the government is there to assist you when you need be. I don't want any John Butlers, hey, I want to build a bridge in Louisiana. Hey, I want to build a library. No. All of that should be done by the states. It is not states' right. So consequently, what has happened then is that we have a Tea Party revolution that nobody's paying attention to in America. And I will say that Johnson, who is also an LSU alum, as a matter of fact, I'll announce it here, we're bringing him. I was a distinguished alum in 2012, and he would be the distinguished alum next year. And I don't think people understand what's going on. Now, these boys in D.C., they're not all my cup of tea at all. But when you try to do big things, everything can change the big thing, there can be failure. And finally, this is the only president, the Republican president, that we've had, whether it's Reagan, whether it's President Bush, who embraced the Southern Republican Party. Now, the Southern Republican Party, remember, the all blacks were Republicans in the South until 75. And when there was the big switch, then we created the Lincoln Republican Party. We get together in Washington every year. But by embracing that tradition, it also brought in the tradition of white citizens councils, KKK, and all of those traditional kinds of things. So we are living in interesting kinds of times. But let me conclude by saying this: we're in a revolution that we haven't seen since the Civil War. And that revolution is being led by the Tea Party, not the Republican Party. And the Tea Party believes that people like me, the technocrats, have taken the jobs from future generations and put them in China. John Reynolds, I was taught to tell my MBA students that you go to markets where the market is growing and the land is cheap and the labor is cheap. But what happened in 2008 when they restricted the number of chips, well, China basically said we better go into technology ourselves, put an emphasis, they stopped building buildings and created an emphasis on what we call high tech. Created some of the most dynamic chips now. They have a cell phone that don't use cell towers. It goes right to satellites. And if you look at the manufacturing infrastructure, it's just out of sight. So we're in a big revolution that we haven't seen economically since the Civil War. And with that, John Reynolds, I get your comments on my comments. Now, I wish I had Llewellyn here because he'd take me apart. So John, that's my speech, and I hope you recorded that because hell, I can run off of that thing. Hell, I might.
It's all being recorded. But before I introduce John Reynolds, let me share something, Johnny, because you brought up the one company thing, and I was I'd be remiss to tell everybody that the closest thing to what you're saying, a one man unicorn startup is almost there. So the hottest thing right now in AI is a company called Cursor, which was founded in 22, and it came out with their first version of the product in 23, and they're now in version 2. Cursor is how all the companies in the world develop large language models. This company was created by 4 guys, and in 12 months became a unicorn.
Yep.
And so pretty soon they'll start being unicorns founded by one person, and maybe John Reynolds has an answer to that because he's working on so many things. But let me quickly introduce John. And basically, John is an old friend. He's the president of Agile Fractal Grid, and he has created a platform to help rural and campus communities achieve energy security and meet renewable energy goals while also providing gigabit broadband access. Uh, Together with an accompanying economic development ecosystem, uh, Agile Fractal Grid can help deploy clusters of microgrids into a system of systems to behave like a utility while with the ability to participate in grid resiliency services and energy markets at scale. John Reynolds, welcome to the program.
John Reynolds, it's good to see a great TCU guy like you whose father was over the Texas Aggies cadets.
That's right.
I know you, John. You can't run from me because I'm a big buff. I love the military.
I love it. I love it. Good to be here. Good to be here.
So, John, tell us what are you working on? What's in front of you for the next 6 months? What kind of projects you're working on?
Well, sure. First of all, things evolve. The last time I was here, we went through the same sort of thing.
Yep.
The picture evolves, and a lot of these things that we talked about the last time were kind of space age kinds of things, and right now it's kind of the norm as far as what's going on. So we're seeing a whole change in attitude out here as far as what conventional actually means and what what's brand new versus what is contemporary as far as what's going to happen. But just to update you on a couple of the projects we have, again, most of these have to do with energy, as you might guess from the name, but it's really infrastructure as far as what's going on because it's everything that uses energy is also related to what's going on here. But we have a couple of projects that some of my favorites are a long time coming. But we have in New York City, we got the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which is the incubator for all of New York City as far as what's going on. And we have a program called the Buildings as Batteries, in which everybody has figured out that it's cheaper to generate your own power than it is to buy it from the utilities, as long as you can build it on premises. And so this particular process does that. It generates 90% of its own power, uses 10% from Con Ed as kind of the emergency backup as far as what's going on. But it does it through a particular approach in which current fuel is natural gas, but it captures the carbon as far as what's going on to make it quite acceptable. It also captures the heat that's generated as far as what's going on, and it stores that in batteries, thermal batteries. So it's extremely efficient as far as what's going on, and it's being put together as an example for the 5,500 other buildings in New York City that are going to come under intense fines relative to the local law 97 arrangement up there. So it's a deal in which the Brooklyn Navy Yard pays nothing for this, costs them nothing to do this. We finance the whole thing. The very first year of operation, it will generate about $600,000 of additional savings for them. Over the 15-year energy as a service arrangement, it will generate between 12 and $13 million, and they pay nothing for that other than say yes. So they have the courage. I mean, it's their mission to do this for New York City. So we're very proud of them for doing this sort of thing. So we're doing that. We have another project, Johnny, that you introduced us to there in Louisiana, relative to the creation of hydrogen through a chemical process as opposed to electrolysis. And I'm pleased to say that's evolved, and it was actually funded by private interest as opposed to the public interest.
Are you going to name it after me, or are you just going to, I mean,
Well, we could think about that. I'll bring it up to the board and see what they
no, we
think.
need to talk. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but essentially, what was learned down there is that the byproduct of creating hydrogen through this chemical process is worth 3 times as much money as the hydrogen is, as far as what's going on. And so it's a chemical company up in Baton Rouge that is doing this, and they're loving what is going to happen. But Louisiana is kind of ripe for these kinds of innovations just by the nature of what they're all about. We could be moving into the ports down there, certainly the airport, with some of the things I'll
Mhm.
tell you about. So it's in our sweet spot. We were selected in New York City as far as the example for their Blue Highways program, as far as the way to turn the 30, I believe it's 29 ports in New York City into an intermediate distribution mechanism for getting goods delivered to where it has to go to get the big trucks off the streets. Right now, the problem in New York City is there's so many diesel trucks parked in the middle of the streets. It kills you as far as traffic is concerned. And so this is their vision. They selected us for the idea, but things in New York City take a long time. I think it's going to be the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal will be the first one, and there's activities going on at Hunts Point. That'll take a while to unfold, but it's a good lesson relative to some of the rest of what's going on. So anyhow, that's happening. We
But
got
John, let me ask you this, because
sure,
I've been working on the energy stuff for 10 years now
yeah.
with Richard Strindle, Richard. And it's all about controls. As a matter of fact, we have an editorial coming out either in the New York Times or I want in the other magazine on the issue with energy is controls. That is, and if you put the proper controls on energy, then you can do a number of things. Number one, you can bring back onto the grid what you need to bring back with no problems with the proper controls. Number two, the savings of energy would just go up tremendously because right now we're running the grid with the same controls that we had in the 1920s, and that's like trying to run the controls from our Lexus L500s with Andreas Chevrolet that he has. It's Corvette, right? So my question is, as you go forward, that's the first question. Think about that one. And the second one is we have a new president at LSU that I need to introduce you to.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to talk to you about, I'll give you a call, some things that we are doing. But let's talk about the controls and what's the relationship between energy controls and savings. Now, my father, bless his heart, was an agriculture agent on the North Shore of New Orleans when I grew up, started in 1932, and he was doing rural electrification, and every farm was independent.
Mm-hmm.
No grid at all.
Right.
They ran all of the lights, all of the milking machines for cows, completely independent. The second question is, are we going back to that? Which is not a bad idea.
Well, it's not. It's not. Essentially, the way we're looking at it is that what's broken about the grid is it relies too much on the long distance delivery of power 1,000 miles from where it was generated, and that's fine for a while, and then it gets too fragile. The what the law of nature says is that if you do this stuff at the edges, as far as what's going on, you take care of yourself. You don't care what chaos is going on anyplace else, and that's what survives in the world. And so essentially, this whole move towards generating the power closer to the edge, 5 years ago they would look at you like you had two heads if you said things like that. But now it's pretty much becoming accepted that
Well,
this is a good
yeah,
thing.
it was based on ideas, concept, and when Tesla, he compared it to the speed of light, if you remember.
Yeah.
Tesla compared it to the speed of light, and he said it could go from New York to whatever have you. What we have found, however, is the practicality of keeping the lights on. Is that local is always better.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have just found that. Now, Andreas and I talked to a great engineer from West Texas, and they were trying to put their entire city on a grid that was independent from the grid of the great state of Texas. And then if you look at, I grew up in southern Louisiana, and everybody has a generator running off of natural gas. Where I grew up, it was just something that was natural. We had our big whiteout here in Austin about 5 years ago.
Yep.
I told my wife it comes 100 years. And my brother said to me, I can't believe you don't have a generator. Even the public housing in Louisiana, they all have generators. So I had to get me one. So I think that your challenge is good, but the question is it being accepted? How did you enter a regulated industry? How do you deal with the controls when the unions are there? They're afraid to lose their job because it's very, very hard to disrupt, if you will,
Yeah.
a regulated industry.
Yeah.
What's
I
your
think
what's your strategy, John?
I think when you look at those kinds of problems, they are impossible to solve.
Hmm.
They just are, and so we have our own approach as far as how you deal with the problems that are impossible to solve. We use the Captain Kirk approach
Hmm.
in terms of starting with places where you're unregulated or where you don't have these problems and get it going, and then suddenly the attitude changes as people are watching this whole business, like in New York City, of it costs you less to generate your own power, and this is going to be promoted throughout all of New York City. It doesn't cost you any money. You don't have to pay for it. Somebody else pays all the money. It does not a penny from the federal government as far as what's going on. So I think the whole business that you're talking about relative to generating power locally is coming back into vogue because it's what nature shows survives over the long time. So I think that's the real lesson here, and it's proving out because it's getting more and more practical. Now the demands for energy, going through Andreas's discussion about the AI revolution,
Hmm.
we have an amazing number of data centers that are talking to us about
Well,
what's going on.
I have a great friend who owns the data center
Yeah.
in Boston.
Yeah.
Went to the University of Georgia. I need to hook
Yep.
you all up because we know that, and he just purchased a power plant, I think. But we do know the following. The region of variation in accepting things are very, very great. Now you're in Boston, right? If I remember.
Oh, yeah.
You're in Boston. And by the way, we just fired a coach from Boston, though. So when you go down to Louisiana, don't say anything about
Okay.
being in Boston, and don't try to talk in an accent. All right.
Okay.
When you go down and you say, "How you doing?" I like that. Yeah. Okay. So my question is, how can you scale this given the reality of regulated grids? That was my question. Second question
Sure.
in America.
Yeah. Well, I think where you want to go first is where it's not regulated.
Okay. And where is
So
that? I thought it was all regulated.
no, behind the meter is not
Oh,
regulated
yeah, yeah,
in
yeah.
some
That's
way.
right. Yeah.
And so if you generate your own power behind the meter,
Right.
you
That's right.
need to do that. I mean, there's safety things that you need to do. So as you get into this, what you find, the people who are really thinking about this, it dawns on them that oh, this is a good thing. What the next thought is, well, if we're going to have to generate our own power, why don't we why don't we generate have a capacity of generating double the amount of power that we actually need, and then on a marginal cost basis, we'll just sell back the excess power we have to somebody else that wants it if the capabilities are there for using it, and that's the big question. But as far as the big data centers are concerned, when you look at how much power goes into some of these giant data centers, that they very well qualify precise for being an independent power producer as far as what's going on. And so you have large data centers, you have medium-sized data centers, you have small data centers. If you can put them together so that they operate as a team, as opposed to just a bunch of independent groups out there, then you have a very interesting thing. And that's what the fractal design is all about. It's a team of teams of this sort of thing. And when you operate as a resilient mesh, as far as what's going on, you can put a bullet in any piece on there, and the lights don't blink because they
Okay.
put each other out. And so that's the controls that you're talking about. It's not just controls for an individual spot. It's how do you control it as a team so that you're not quite so dependent on any one piece of equipment failing as far as
Okay.
what's going on. So that's essentially the fractal design.
Well, yeah, and before I ask you about the Louisiana stuff, my distinguished colleague Andre Carvalho, who designed our grid and who's designing big, magnificent grids all over the world, he fears that he's been disrupting himself with what he's been doing. So I need to get his comments on. Since you were right in here, you just stepped right in his stomach. I'm going to take over the lead of the show and say, Mr. Andreas Carvalho, what do you think about those comments?
No, I think that, again, if you look at the history, right, the history is that the grid was built one microgrid at a time, and where the grid exists, sophisticated wise, parts of China, all of the United States being the largest in the world, most of Western Europe, you kind of take it for granted, right? But it started one microgrid at a time and one generator at a time, and little by little getting them interconnected. And so that design, it's really the best design when you think about it, having, sort of co-located the supply and the demand as much as possible for resiliency purposes. When Armageddon happened here and we had the snowstorm and the big issue in Texas with ERCOT, I immediately reminded everybody around me that we used to have 11 grids in Texas that were somewhat pseudo-connected, but they had the independence and the generation to be standalone. And when Puerto Rico went down a few years ago with the storm they had that knocked down all their transmission infrastructure and all that, they rebuilt it. And instead of being a single grid, Puerto Rico is 11 grids, actually. So, redundancy at the microgrid level is the right architecture to have.
Okay. So you don't see any conflict with what's going on in Texas and the fact that lots of Texas communities are trying to do their own grid, because what you're saying and what John has said, the excess could go back on the grid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But you
the,
have
the
to have the
challenge,
controls
the
to do that.
challenge, the challenge that we have is not technological, it's political and policy.
Right.
You have an industry that has been given monopolies. This is the legacy of Samuel Insull and his invention, and eventually controlling the whole world, and then Purple coming up in the 1930s to break him out as a monopoly holder. But there's still, on the retail side, you still have monopolies, right? And so part of the challenge, Johnny, and we have talked about it, is that the monopoly holders will continue to do whatever they can to maintain the status quo on the monopoly of the retail of the energy. City of Austin, city of San Antonio, wherever you have monopolies like that, right? And so, and they really don't want to give that up because it is a monopoly is a monopoly. It's an incredible gift that keeps on giving. So the question is, how does the concept of me selling my excess rooftop solar energy to my cousin across the street happen? And can it happen in a fair way versus a way that requires a monopoly intermediary? So policy will dictate today. Eventually, I think that the genie's out of the bottle because of the EVs and eventually the vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. And a lot of people have generators in their houses. In fact, America consumes roughly 900,000 diesel generators a year,
Mm-hmm.
which is a gigantic number. Certainly not 300 million, but it's a pretty big number, almost a million units sold every year. And that with solar panels and all that will continue to grow, and more people will jump on the bandwagon. So at some point, the vote, the voters themselves will scream loud enough that maybe something will happen at the wholesale level and the monopolies will
Yeah,
be
well, Andreas,
redesigned.
my fear, John, in my in my research on this area is that it takes to run a data center about the same amount of power it takes to run the city of Austin when it's big enough.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Are we headed to a Pearl Harbor for electricity in America? Nobody in the great state of Texas would say, they say, well, we're doing nuclear here, we're doing this here. Andreas would say, we can handle it all. As data centers begin to evolve, and we're not going to talk about the bubble related to that. John, we all remember the .com. I can say Andreas.com, I'm in for 10 million. You know, I can say guitar.com, I'm in for 5 million, right? I can say uh,
Hmm.
machine learning, I'm in for 90 million. And the five companies that's really carrying the stock market, you know who they are. The investment is so heavy in data centers. And of course, in Texas, we say it's not a bubble until it bursts. Right. So I'm asking you, do you think we're headed for Pearl Harbor with the demand, with the automobiles and cars and airplanes and trucks that's going to be run by batteries? Where are we
Well,
headed?
I think if you take current design and say, okay, that's fixed and we're going to use it for the next 1,000 years, that's probably a mistake because things need to evolve in order
Yeah.
to be good for optimization because the situation changes as far as what's going on. And so I think that the whole AI arrangement is fine as far as its current view, but you have to look and see what's changing about it as far as what's going to happen. And it's all about where do you keep the data as
Hmm.
opposed to where do you do the computing. And very quickly here, what will happen is most of the data will be retained at the edges. It will not be contained at the big central sites. And so you're going to have to get to where the data is to do AI. And so this business of the mesh approach as opposed to the large centralized approach, it's going the same way the power grid. You
I
want to be
agree.
able to distribute the computing out to where it's actually needed, to where the data actually is, and yet you want to be able to make it work fast enough that it doesn't make any difference. And so you have the same thing going with computing as you have with electricity.
That is
That's
a
what's going to
great,
happen.
great point because we are old enough to remember when, well, when I was at Northwestern, we didn't call it the data center. We just called it a server. And we had a dumb computer, right? ACT5A that interacted with the grid, as they call it now. Interacted with the dumb, way it was, the cloud, as they call it now. And I could dial on my telephone and get my data from anywhere. As a matter of
Mhm.
fact, Andreas have talked about me of putting a server in my house,
Mhm.
Mhm.
right? So do you see then, and this is very interesting to me, because I'm doing a book now on the movement of capitalism to the cloud. Okay. And everything is going to the cloud. And I think sociologically, they're retraining you how to think. They're retraining you how to act, right? If the
Mhm.
cloud gets so expensive, they're going to reject it and say, hey, put me a server down in the basement.
Exactly.
That's the way we started.
Exactly.
Every company had a server, not a cloud, they changed the names like Starbucks did to a cup of coffee that used to cost $5 to the filet gadu with milk, and it became $9.
Yeah.
So, do you see at all that there would be a revolution in data storage where John Butler would say, with my firm, put me a cloud in my office down in the basement, and then locally we could back it up with a cloud in the city of Austin?
Yeah. I I certainly do. I don't think it's going to take 100 years to get there because the speed with what's
No, no,
going
yeah.
on, it'll be 3 to 5 years, and that's they have people tracking what's
Okay.
going on. We talked before. We joked about the colleges and the universities that we all went to.
Yeah.
This little guy right here. I was at the University of Texas. I ran the 1604 controlled data supercomputer, largest supercomputer in the world when I was a
Taylor Hall, baby. Taylor Hall.
freshman. As a freshman, this little guy here has far more computing power than the 1604 ever had as far as a supercomputer
Yeah.
is
Were
concerned.
you in Taylor Hall? I think we ran it out of
Oh
Taylor
yeah.
Hall.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So, John, I want
Well,
you to tell me now about what you're doing in the great state of Louisiana.
Louisiana. Okay. We I think going back to what I alluded to before, we have this activity going on with the supply chain operation. And we may actually be talking to the governor down there about this particular arrangement as far as the tracking of goods, as far as what's going on. This is a lift out of the DHL Corporation that we've become involved with as far as the tracking of goods and the optimization, AI optimization of things going back and forth. And so there's a new port being built there in New Orleans, the mega port arrangement. It's
Mm-hmm.
one of
Hmm.
about 21 different ports that make up New Orleans, and a little to be known here. New Orleans is actually the largest port in the United States from a tonnage standpoint when you add up all that's going on. I think Houston is bigger from a
Well,
container
Miami,
standpoint.
Miami stole a lot of our juice.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So as you look at it, but in terms of the logistics, as far as what's going on by sea, by air, we have discussions going on with the airport there also relative to this sort of thing. We have the arrangements with the train companies, the rail companies. We have certainly the connections with the trucking companies because of what's going on. But we're forming this group. I say we are supporting the group that is being formed to handle the logistics. And it was a kind of a quiet program until the trade wars erupted here, which kind of disrupted all kinds of things. And so what's going on right now is this is the favorite topic of how you expedite these things and how you track where they came from, where they're going to. And so this is a very sophisticated system with the millions and millions of transactions that have already gone through in production with it. But it's being introduced at the various airports and seaports here in the United States. But there's a particular fascination within Louisiana on this relative to some of the other things that are going on that have to do with what's happening. And so that it's reached the governor's desk, and so it'll be a good thing there. So we'll do this, but it'll be a part of not just transportation, but it works its way into manufacturing aspects. It works its way into mining aspects. This whole tracking, and I don't want to go into a lot of detail on this, but the disruption that's currently taking place because of the barring of the de minimis deliveries that are going on. There's shut down about 80% of the cargo coming into the United States of small arrangements. This
Yep.
system handles that.
Hmm.
80% has been shut down, and this system handles that, and it can be demonstrated on Monday. So anyhow, I think these guys have a good thing going on, but
And
they've
John,
asked
I'll
us
be
to put it
happy
together,
to
and we're gonna do it down in Louisiana as far as
well,
the
I'd
team.
be happy to talk to the Landry because we need to get him out of LSU football.
Yep.
When- and I know all those boys down there, and I know the lieutenant governor. He's a good friend of mine. As a matter of fact, I have their cell phones, so I'd be happy to give them a call. As a matter of fact, I'm working on some other big stuff for LSU, and I just sent you an email about some communications.
Excellent. Excellent. Excellent.
And I'll be
So,
more than happy to help out on the helping out 512 CMG, and this will be one of our projects. In other
Outstanding.
words, yeah.
so Johnny, I wanted to highlight, but back to our conversation, what's happening. The president issued an executive order on the 24th. It's called Genesis Mission. And the Genesis mission charges the Secretary of Energy with leveraging our national labs to unite America's brightest minds, more powerful computers, and vast scientific data into one cooperative system for research. The order directs the Department of Energy to create a closed-loop AI experimentation platform that integrates our nation's world-class supercomputers and unique data assets to generate scientific foundation models and power robotic laboratories. The order instructs the Assistant to the President of Science and Technology to coordinate the national initiative and the integration of data infrastructure from across the federal government. The Secretary of Energy, APST, and the Special Advisor for AI and Crypto will collaborate with academia and private sector innovators to support and enhance the Genesis mission. Priority areas of focus include the greatest scientific challenges of our time that can dramatically improve our nation's national, economic, and health security, including biotechnology, critical materials, nuclear fission, in fusion energy, space exploration, quantum information science, in semiconductors, and microelectronics. I mean,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
This is happening, Johnny. It's
It's happening
happening.
now, and I want to get John in there on behalf of a 512 CMG, and then I'll let you work out the details with Andreas. And then because I could Louisiana is like, I grew up most of the guys. As a matter of fact, I think I met and raised up them because they're much younger than me now.
Yeah.
And but I'm on the foundation board at National Foundation Advisory Board for LSU. And I deal with those guys all the time. And I know them all. So I'm gonna call the lieutenant governor and maybe having him to give you a call.
I think that would be great. But when you
Yeah,
think
on
about it,
behalf of 512 CMG now, 512
oh,
CMG
oh,
like hear that shing a shing a shing
there you
when
go.
he hooks up people.
When, when, when you think about it, this piece, Andreas, that you just read from,
Yeah.
Mhm.
that is the Agile Fractal Grid. It's the computation side of what's going on and the interlinkage as far as
Uh-huh.
how it should work, and the mass customization center that we're creating as far as being able to do this at scale. That is permission to actually do what it is that we're talking about here. That's what I'm hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, let me share something else about it real quick. So here's another the key takeaways. So this is published by the Department of Energy's website. So speed up nuclear reactor licensing, add 300 gigawatts of new U.S. nuclear capacity by 2050, lay the groundwork for faster reactor testing, deploy U.S. reactors for AI and military bases, explore fuel recycling and reprocessing, amp up domestic nuclear fuel production, bolster the American nuclear workforce, assess spent nuclear fuel management, expand U.S. nuclear energy exports. So, yeah, yes to all of the above. I think John and Johnny, but I think that the big push is nuclear energy. The big push. Obviously, that's not the answer to the whole thing, because they're ignoring the edge of the grid and the EVs, and every home should become a power plant, and that's what the Agile Fractal Vision is about. So,
Well, the
uh,
great thing about John's vision is that we know we've got to change the grid at 40,000 feet. We can't turn it off.
mhm.
And so what he has done is to provide not only an opportunity but a mechanism. But because Andreas, the only thing you want to do is have your lights come on when you turn them in your house. You're
Oh
not
yeah.
interested in the technology. Every American I know says, "Well, we don't have an electric problem. My lights came on this morning."
Hmm.
But what John allows people to do is to behind the
Sure.
grid is to understand that there are other options. And one of those options is that, while you're on the grid, you could become independent, but dependent at the same time when you need to be dependent.
Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. What you want to do is be able to implement this incrementally so that you don't have to make any major change all at once.
Right.
It just begins, and then it's like the internet. It expands at its own speed once it's going on. And the internet is an edge type of arrangement also when you look and see what made it work. So same principle. It's just the speed that it can be implemented is what's important.
Right. I like it because I've been working on it. And mine is technology transfer, John. My deal, I have books on tech transfer, and my deal is that America has created and paid for the technology that will allow the grid to do well, but it's sitting on the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why it's sitting on the shelf, you're still making billions of dollars with technology from the 1920s. So if you're making billions of dollars and there's no competition, what are you going to do? You're going to maintain the technology that you have, right? And continue to make billions of dollars. So therefore, my contention was that everything that we need to do in America, that's to do what you're doing, most of the technology is sitting on the shelf.
Right.
All of the controls are sitting on the shelf because we have spent billions of dollars, right, to the people who do in universities and the big dogs who do all the research for them to do research. The problem is
Sure.
when the research is done, it's not going anywhere. Why? Because it is regulated technology and regulated industry, and you can't disrupt it like you can candy. You can't disrupt it like you can Sears and Roebuck. You can't disrupt
Hmm.
it like you can American Airlines because it has to be there.
Hmm.
Yeah. So John, we'll talk again. I'm glad I
Okay.
got you in my great state of Louisiana, but
Okay.
just don't tell anybody you're from Boston when you go down there.
Okay. Well, they talk funny up there. That's
Yeah, they talk funny up there.
All right, guys. Well,
Hey,
it's always a pleasure to catch up, John. I know that I was telling you earlier that I'm going to be going to DC to meet up with and celebrate the Data Act of 10 years ago and hang out with Al Berkeley and a bunch of Washington DC superstars next week. And then the following week, I'm going to be in San Francisco at the Digital Twin quarterly meeting. We are building our own platform now in partnership with EDX, by the way. And we have projects in Virginia, South Carolina, in Indiana that we're going to be deploying this technology. So we're very excited about that. We should talk about that at
yep,
some other time, John.
yep,
Uh, and and then we continue to do street lights in working with cities. Next year, we're going to have a lot of digital roundtable city managers and mayors join. In fact, we have already lined up several speakers for January, and I will be going to CES in Vegas, the Consumer Electronics Show, the 6th, 7th, and 8th and 9 of January, and that's where we get the first dibs of all the things that are coming. And I suspect that flying cars are going to be the big thing next year, Johnny. And obviously, you are probably working on the Disruptor 50 from CNBC, of which all these companies that we're talking about are part of OpenAI
Absolutely.
and you
I
name
enjoy
them.
that.
So,
That's the most frightening thing that I do. Right.
so anyway, John, any final thoughts on what's going to be coming up your way?
well, I
Well, I
think,
think I think two things.
go ahead, John.
I think
Oh
that.
yeah, I was talking to John, not to Johnny, but go ahead,
Oh,
Johnny.
okay. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, well, I think the key thing to concentrate on right now, all this stuff works. So making it work is not necessarily a revolutionary thing. It's making it scale. is the thing. And so that's where we need the ingenuity. And that's always the way it works. You have to make it work first, and then you have to make it scale. Then you have to make it cheap, and then you have to make it pretty. And you have to work on all this at the same time, but you can't finish it except in that sequence as far as what's going. So the scaling, the mass customization aspects where you're able to have hundreds or thousands of these projects going on simultaneously. That's what everybody's looking for, and that's what we need to figure out how to do. That's the next breakthrough.
Well, John, I'm going to say one thing, and I'm going to say it very slowly.
Okay.
The GNP of America is dependent upon the grid like no other time in the history of America.
You're right.
Sure.
You're absolutely right.
From airplanes, from automobiles, to wireless cars, to cars without people in them, to cell phones, to data centers. No other time in the history of any country have we been so dependent upon cloud computing and electricity. So your job, if you continue to do it, is to continue, John Reynolds, to understand that as your company does great things, you're talking about the gross national product of the entire country. And we now have a hegemony in the East that's
Yes.
doing the same thing.
Yes. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, Mr. Phelps, I accept.
Well, good luck. Good luck. I like people who are my age is wondering what they're talking about. But I
All
think
right,
that's a no-brainer.
Johnny, take us away.
Yeah.
There we go.
Riding on the city of New Orleans, Illinois Central, Monday morning rail. 15 cars and 15 restless passengers. 3 conductors and 25 sacks of mail. All along this southbound Odyssey, the train pulls out of Kankakee and the run was destroyed. Housing, fields, and storms. Passing towns that have no names and freight yards full of old black men. And the drain of all Americans about electricity. Good morning, America. How are you? Hey, don't you know me? I'm your native son. I'm the train they call the city of New Orleans. And I'll be gone 500 miles when the day is done. And remember, John, all those trains will be electric in the future.
That's right. And they'd be autonomous too. They'd be autonomous too.
That's right.
All right, John, I'm gonna get on the Louisiana thing right away. Thank you so much.
Okay.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Mhm.